Hello everybody, today we're going to be doing chapter 16 of the Summa Logicae by William of Ockham. This chapter is named Against Scotus's Account of the Universal. We're going to start with a quick explanation of some of the metaphysics of Blessed John Duns Scotus, because this is what he's going to be attacking. So first, we have non-separable formalities. So Scotus believed that your substantial form, and your essence, this is kind of like what you are, have these distinctions in them which don't break identity. So, you might be Bob, and Bob is identical to himself, and all of the formalities within Bob are also identical to Bob. But the formalities are distinct by something that Scotus would call a formal distinction. Formalities are not parts, but they are distinct from their wholes just insofar as they don't share the same definition as the whole. Next, Scotus is going to talk about Ockham is going to be talking about real distinctions here. A real distinction, as far as I can tell, that he's referring to is something which is separable. Something is separable from something. If something is separable, then it is really distinct from the other thing. Next, we've got common nature. I'm a human, you're a human. We both have these little things in us which are humanity. The things which are the same between you and me is our common nature. And then, finally, real identity again. There is a real identity between different formalities, even though they differ in definition. Okay. And now, actually, one last thing. One of Scotus's famous theories is a theory of something called hechaity. So the medievals were very interested in what made because all individuals share these common natures, they were trying to figure out what made one person different, because there's one thing that's the same about you and everyone else. You're both human, but there has to be these other things which are distinct. And Scotus formulated a theory of hechaity, or thisness, which is like a gift of perfect individuality from God, which distinguished you from all other humans. And this is what Ockham is going to be calling an individual difference in all of these arguments. Okay. First, we have the argument that nature is not formally distinct from itself. The individual difference is formally distinct from the nature. Therefore, the individual difference is not the nature. So what the hechaity and the nature are formally distinct on Scotus's view. So this is what he's arguing against here, because there can't be real identity if the nature and the individual difference, or the hechaity, have different properties. The second argument, the same thing is never both common and proper. Proper here just means particular. In the view of the Scotists, the individual difference is proper and the universal is common. Therefore, no universal is identical with an individual difference. Argument 3. Opposites can be attributed to one and the same created thing. Or opposites cannot be attributed to one and the same created thing. But common and proper are opposites. Therefore, the same thing cannot be both proper and common at the same time. It is, if the common nature were really identical with the individual difference, then there would be as many common natures as there are individuals. But then none of the natures would be common, therefore there are no common natures. Things are either distinguished by themselves or something intrinsic to them. The humanity of Socrates is something different from the humanity of Plato. Therefore, they are distinguished in and of themselves, and not by differences that are added to them. According to Aristotle, things differing in species also differ in number. The nature of a man and the nature of a donkey differ in species. Therefore, they are numerically distinguished in and of themselves. Therefore, they are each numerically one by themselves. That which cannot belong to many cannot be predicated of many. Nature cannot be dedicated to many if it is the same thing as individual difference. Thus, it cannot be predicated of many, and thus cannot be a universal. The difference between the individual difference and the nature which it contracts is either greater or less than the difference between two particulars. It is not greater because they do not differ really. It is not less because then they would admit of one and the same definition, since two particulars can admit of the same definition. Therefore, there is no distinction between the individual nature and the individual difference. Either the nature is the individual difference or it is not. If the individual difference is the nature, then because the individual difference is proper and not common, so must the nature be proper and not common. The individual difference is not formally distinct from the individual difference. The individual difference is the nature, therefore, the nature is not formally distinct from the individual difference. If the individual difference is not said to be the nature, then there is a real distinction between the nature and the individual difference. And the reason there aren't any more premises attached to number 6 is because that's the conclusion he's looking for. That would prove that there's a distinction larger than a formal distinction, and that's all he's trying to prove here. Or that's one of the things he's trying to prove. Then finally, after all of the arguments, Scotus lays out some general points against formal distinctions in general. All things distinct in creatures are really distinct and therefore really different things. So Scotus is going to want to say that there is a distinction between your rationality and your animality, but it's not a distinction that's so large that it makes them really different things. And Occam is just going to deny that. He's going to say if they are different, then they must be really distinct. They must be different things which are kind of cobbled together. Then Occam says that anything in conversations of identity must be able to satisfy these descriptions. This is A, this is B, therefore A is B. Or, this is not A, this is B, therefore B is not A. If it can't satisfy these descriptions, then it is not really identical with itself. And that's kind of the underpinning of all of these different arguments he's given. All of these are different versions of this objection. And then, never deny that in creatures things were never deny that in creatures where contradictory notions hold, there is distinction. And then finally, we have the ending notes from the chapter. Nothing except particular form and particular matter and the composite of the two exist. There is no common form or universal. No one should imagine Socrates to possess humanity, which has an individual difference added to it. Socrates doesn't have humanity. He just has the individual difference. He just is an individual. And then finally, everything is either matter, form, or a separated substance, which would be either God or an angel. And that'll be all for this episode. Thank you for listening. Either the nature